I'm Dr. Carrie Horn, author of A Soul Aligned, How God Heals His Creations, and Heart Known Series Workbook, a practical application workbook for biblical healing. In this video, I want to shed some truth on what is being called a mental health crisis in this country. And I'm going to tell you a few of the behind the scenes things that are going on within mental health that you should be aware of. So there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of news coverage about a mental health crisis, that there aren't enough trained experts to attend to the needs of those who have quote unquote mental illness or mental health issues. And I think the bigger question that we need to ask is, why is it that we have so many mental health issues going on? And why is it that if these people are actually experts, if the field is actually being successful in helping people, why are mental health issues increasing? Because that's part of the issue. Now, I will indeed say and acknowledge that there is a shortage of mental health people. I don't even want to call them experts. People who have been trained within the field of mental health. If you've listened to my videos, you know that I myself have been trained in the field of mental health. I am a trained clinical psychologist. I practiced for many years within the field of mental health, and I do not believe in anything that it teaches. I do not believe that they have truth because they deny and reject the Creator. And anyone who fundamentally denies and rejects the Creator, even if they call themselves Christian, are in a field that fundamentally denies and rejects the Creator, is fundamentally predicated on a science that denies and rejects the Creator. The Creator does not bless that, and He does not provide healing through that, because He tells us that He does not yield His glory or give praise to idols. He's not going to do it. So that's part of the reason why we find ourselves in this situation in which the field of mental health has now adapted all of these pagan practices. And really, if you look into the history of mental health, you can see that people like Jung and Freud were practicing witchcraft. This is a field that has been riddled with satanic practices. Now, when I went into the field, I did not know this. I was not Christian. I did not know Christ. I did not know truth. And I was looking to the world to tell me what truth was, because that's what we do when we don't know Christ. But before I get into all of those issues, I'm going to expose some of the behind the scenes issues that are going on within this field and within the system that this field has sold out to. The field of mental health in the 1970s sold out to research, and they sold out to research because they had an ongoing inferiority complex within the sciences. They were tired of not being taken seriously. And so when cognitive behavioral therapy came along and claimed that they, by research, could prove that this was a panacea for mental health, for a variety of mental health issues, not just one, it's a cure-all, and they could demonstrate it via scientific research, the insurance companies latched onto that because the claim was that they could do this in 10 weeks. And insurance companies were tired of paying for ongoing therapy that never went anywhere. It's relentless therapy, right? I mean, and that's what we see right now too. Neither the 10-weeker or the ongoing therapy helps anybody. It can't heal. It only treats by putting a Band-Aid and often actually making it worse. We know that. I think that if there was any research done on that, we would see that people are relentlessly in therapy, that people are relentlessly relapsing on whatever supposed recovery is being claimed and ending up in psych hospitals because they're still suicidal 20 years later. We can see that people being on anti-anxiety medication, benzodiazepines, and other medications, that has rebound anxiety, that people actually get worse, not better. I can tell you qualitatively that I have asked every single person I have ever worked with, were you in therapy before? If you were, what was helpful? And invariably, they tell me that the thing that was helpful was that they had someone to talk to and vent. That is not something you have to go to an expert to do. Moreover, that practice lends itself to idolatry because we are supposed to be bringing that to God. So anyone who's working with us as a correct and godly shepherd, someone who actually speaks on the authority of the one who sent them and speaks truth and does so for his glory, not theirs, is going to shepherd you back to God. They're going to teach you how to have a relationship with God. Well, there's no space for that in mental health because mental health treats the flesh. So just as God has said for thousands of years, is there no balm in Gilead? Why is there no healing then for the daughter of my people? Have we not poured in billions of dollars into mental health research? Why then is there no healing for the daughter of his people? Now, let me tell you what's going on at this point in history. The majority of the people in mental health are worse off than anyone that's coming to them. And that's a scary thing, especially because these are the people that we trust our children with. These are the people treating our children and excluding us from having any part in their treatment most of the time, even though our children come back home to us and they're our responsibility. But whose fault is that? A parent should fundamentally know that God has given them the authority over their child, and that anybody who's working with their child, they better know what that person is doing, and they better know that person. We have abdicated control over the most precious people in our lives who God put us in charge of, because those are not even our children, they're his children. We've abdicated control to total strangers because the world told us that they're an expert. And the big joke is that people who go into this field are nutty, right? People who go into this field are unbalanced. They have their own issues. They're nutty. And having been in this field for a very long time, I would say that that is absolutely true. Don't do their own work. They're wise in their own eyes. They think they give good advice. That's what they think. And they're trained in the methods of the world. And the prince of the world has no loyalty to us. He does not intend to heal us. He is not the source of truth. So why would we think for 1 second, especially those of us who are believers, why would we think for a second that any worldly discipline, especially one of the sciences that fundamentally reject God, why would we think that that's where our children are going to find healing, or that that's where we're going to find healing? If we're truly in him, we should know better. Another problem is systemic as well. This country has made it far too easy for people to not work. And that doesn't exempt mental health, quote unquote, experts. Many of them do not want to work. And this country has made it very easy for them not to. This country has made it easy for everyone to not work. Everyone except those who have actually worked and have responsibilities and need to continue working. So you have a shortage of so-called mental health experts. Another reason why there is a shortage of mental health experts is because insurance companies are playing games. As long as they don't have enough providers on their panel, you can't find a provider. So they give you a list and they weary you and give you a list of providers so that you call around and then you give up because you figure there's no providers who are taking patients. They don't take your insurance or whatever the case is, and then you give up. And the insurance company doesn't have to pay for that. And I got to tell you, all of these insurance companies play that game. There was no reason why suddenly COVID hits and insurance companies, of all people, are not capable of processing paperwork in order to make sure that there are enough providers on their panel. They do it as a game. They do it to weary you. And people don't understand that as a beneficiary, they have every right to seek and retain services that they are paying for through their insurance, or that someone else is paying for if you have Medicare or Medi-Cal or some other plan. So the first thing that I want you to discern, because I'm not really pushing using your insurance, you know how I feel about healthcare in general. I'm not a fan. I don't use it myself. I get to pay for it because I live in California, but I don't use it. But here's the thing that I want you to understand and I want you to discern is what are the systems that are associated with this field? And if these are the systems that are associated with this field, what's the spirit behind that? If the field of mental health that claims to heal has more interest in their status and glory if they succumb to the standards that they're required to succumb to by a satanic insurance system, what's the spirit behind that? It's not the Spirit of God, I can tell you that. Now I'm going to tell you what goes on in the psychiatric hospitals. Psychiatric hospitals have a contract with emergency rooms typically that the emergency room will pay for a person's stay who has attempted to commit suicide. They will pay for the first 3 days of their stay in a psychiatric hospital, but they will not pay for it after that. So the psychiatric hospital, if that person doesn't have insurance, they are going to have to absorb that cost. And miraculously, after 3 days, every psychiatrist in that hospital says that those who do not have insurance are suddenly ready to leave. But those who do have insurance need to stay another couple weeks. I have personally witnessed in a psychiatric hospital people who were injected with a chemical straitjacket because they didn't want to leave the hospital, injected and carried out by all fours and thrown in a taxi while sedated, and told the taxi driver to drop them off on Skid Row. So now they're going to Skid Row. And for those of you who don't know Skid Row, people who get dropped off sedated end up raped, trafficked, killed, mugged, beat up. It's not a place that you want to go, even during the daylight hours. These are the things that happen. And it's not just one hospital. There have been other hospitals that have been shut down. I've had colleagues that were doing internships at other hospitals. This is what goes on in psychiatric hospitals, in the place that we send our children when they are suicidal. At the most desperate point of a person's life, that is how they're treated by this system. And you think the governing agencies do anything about it? Because I've reported it and nothing has happened to that hospital. Absolutely nothing. That's the state of mental health. That's where we go when we're at our lowest. That's where we go for healing. It's ironic, isn't it? And these are people who went into the field, a helping discipline, right? To care for other people. It is repulsive. So why is there a mental health crisis? Is it because of all of these things? Is it because there's a shortage of people due to COVID, of so-called experts due to COVID? Is it because we don't have access to services that are being peddled to us by the world? With all of the disgusting things that I just mentioned to you that go on within this field, and believe me, there's more. Those are just a few of them to give you a taste. There is still no healing for the daughter of God's people within that field. There is still no healing. And lack of healing has been a problem for a much longer time, long before COVID, long before our country decided to make it easy for people not to work. It just has become, the world's system has become less accessible because of these things that I have explained to you, because of agendas, because of laziness, because of systemic problems, etc. But the problem of no healing has been a problem for a very long time. The problem of the spirit of Satan being behind this field has been a problem for a long time. And I've said to you before, this is not a mental health issue. This is a spiritual issue. And this is an issue of personal accountability, beginning with parents who were given authority over their children and are abdicating control, abdicating power over to systems, and just going on with their lives, sending their children to nannies and family members and teachers and churches and whatever else, letting the world raise their children. And then they wonder why their children are messed up. Then they wonder why, when there's a global pandemic and they've actually got to spend time with their children, why they start having quote unquote mental health issues, and their children do too. There's no family structure, there's no home, and there's no God. Not because God's not accessible, not because there isn't a manual for how to do things. God gave us a manual. We have his written word. We have it straight from the Creator's mouth, straight from his spirit. And not only that, he's given us his Spirit and referred to his Spirit as the counselor. But we have preferred a human counselor. We have preferred a system and a field that drugs people and throws them out on the street. If that is not the spirit of the devil, I don't know what is. And that is what we turn to for healing. First of all, the devil doesn't have the ability to heal. He doesn't have the capacity to heal because he cannot create. But the second of all, he has no desire for that. His desire is to steal, kill, and destroy. Do you see that happening within the field of mental health? Do you see poison being put down the throats of human beings, of God's creations, people being injected like lab rats? We don't have a mental health crisis. We have a spiritual crisis. And we were told that this was going to happen, that people were going to become lovers of self, greedy, disrespectful. They weren't going to care about each other. And that's what's happening. And to be honest, many of those who actually went into the field to help people, and that's few and far between, by the way, but those who did go into the field to help people, they're disenchanted, they're disgusted, their spirit is broken over this, and they don't want to do it anymore. And many of them, like myself, have discovered along the way that everything that we were taught about healing, about treatment, is an outright lie. We don't heal in the flesh. We don't heal in cognitions and behaviors. We don't form some sort of relationship with our therapist where we're able to restructure and redo everything that happened within our childhood. That is not the design our Creator has given us. And the reason we're not healing is because all of those things, all of those beliefs are in opposition to what God has established. And they lead us into idolatry of man. They lead us into thinking that therapist is now going to fill in the spaces that God alone is supposed to fill. He's the only one who knows his creation, who knows what he has sent in our lives, who is sovereign over our lives, and knows exactly what we need in order to heal. He's the only one who knows the purpose for which he set us apart before the creation of the world and knows exactly how he's been building us up to this point. The problem is that we do not understand our design, and we have been seeking false gods, false experts, spurning God. And so you have to understand what God says in his word. Return to me, and I will heal you. Not go to an expert. Not go to the work of your hands, and definitely not heal in the flesh. God says, I separate the light from the darkness. I send everything. Isaiah 45:7. He sends everything. He knows what he intends it for. He knows how to build you. But in all things, you have a choice. You have a choice whether to return to him and find out what he's going to do with that, or to turn to the world that has no loyalty to you. You have been given a manual by which to understand what God expects of you, what your design has been in order to heal. If you are a parent, you have been given authority by God to parent your his children first and foremost. His children who are on loan to you. And when God gives an authority, a responsibility, if he asks you to obey, or tells you to obey, he's going to make a way for you to do that. He's going to give you the information on what he requires. But we've turned away from that information. So of course, God is going to send these things. And lastly, we know what the condition is because Christ already told us what the condition is. He says when a spirit goes out of a person, it goes through arid places looking for rest and does not find it. It comes back to the house and finds it swept clean and unoccupied. And then it brings with it 7 more spirits, more wicked than itself. And the final condition of that person is worse than it was in the beginning. So it will be with this wicked generation. That's the condition that we are living through right now. That is what's going on. And we have to understand, how does it get in to begin with? What do we need to do in order for God to cast it out? Not a so-called deliverance expert. There's no such thing. And God has appointed shepherds in order to edify. and help you understand. You are giving nothing to me right now. I am giving this to you for fun and for free. I am not giving this to you because I'm obligated to you. I'm giving this to you because I'm obligated to God, and this is the purpose for which He set me apart. I am not concerned about being canceled. I don't worry about persecution. I don't worry about any of that because I believe in a God who is sovereign and who has built me to speak truth. And I got to tell you, it's grievous to me that even though I put myself out on the line to speak this to people, they get angry about it, they reject it, all kinds of things. It's just so crazy to me. There's absolutely nothing in this for me here on earth. In fact, all this brings for me is persecution, hatred, canceling, whatever, consequences of the world. The only thing that I get out of this is the joy that's set before me in heaven. There is absolutely no glory here for the message that I'm sharing with you. And yet people would rather go to a charlatan who has everything to gain, money, glory, prestige, status, whatever it is, would rather go to a charlatan of the world and hear a lie. If you've listened this far, I hope you're not one of those people. I hope that you will consider what I have said. I hope you will consider what I have seen, because my testimony is worth something, and so is yours. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. Please, for your sake and for the sake of your children, return to God and He will return to you. Seek Him in truth and in spirit. Those are the worshipers that the Father truly desires. Everything you need to know is in His Word and by His Spirit. His Spirit will testify to it. If you're worried that you're not going to understand the Bible, don't worry about that. Pray. Ask God to teach you. Ask Him to interpret it. I'm not a biblical scholar. My degree is not in theology. And honestly, I thank God for that, because I think if it had been, I would have been exposed to so much false doctrine. There's so many commentaries and man's teachings that you have to study when you're going to a school like that. And that would have muddied the waters. I learned scripture from God. I learned it from His Spirit alone. And that's how He trained me to read the Word and understand the Word, is by His Spirit alone. And I have been given wisdom that I don't hear in other people. Clarity and understanding that I'm not hearing from people who have gone to school. Doesn't mean that they didn't have a heart for God. And I certainly pray that those who went to school and truly had a heart for God and were going into, studying theology, and really wanting to know the truth, I pray that they will find a way back to God and away from all the garbage that they learned in a school that was established by man, because I think that is extremely dangerous. I have found it to be extremely dangerous. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you. Please pray about these things, and I'll see you in the next video.